Good morning. So I have a question. How many of you are morning people? Notice most of them are right up here. Yeah. I'm a morning person too. Between 10 and 2, that's my best time. Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Those 4 hours. It's my best time. So we'll see what happens today. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It was such a blessing when CBRT called and offered this opportunity, and just stand here really in humility and in awe of God and the places that He brings us. So before I get started, though, I would like to make a couple of introductions in the crowd today, and it's great to see so many friends here and people that I haven't seen in a while. But I also have two people here that were really instrumental in the story of Mel Trotter. And one is Abby Slottick, who is our VP of Communication. She's in the back. And then also Janice Petrini, who is currently the vice chairman of our board, sitting right there in the back as well. And those two ladies have been instrumental in the things that are going on in Mel Trotter. So if we could welcome them. And then I had to change my presentation on the fly because I was all set to use examples of what not to do from the Kalamazoo Gospel Rescue Mission. And then I got here and Pastor Michael Brown and his whole team from the Kalamazoo Rescue Mission are there. So I have to change everything. We're now going to talk about Holland Rescue Mission. Should be fine. Just know that, no, just kidding. They do an amazing, amazing job in Kalamazoo, and so honored to partner in ministry with you guys. So when the introduction was happening and a vast array of experience, or I'm just ADHD, one of the two, and every couple of years we have to do something else. But that experience really has informed a lot of what we're doing at Mel Trotter. And have you ever had that experience where you have no idea what's going on in your life, and if you're a person of faith as I am, you don't know what God is doing and it just doesn't make sense? And you're put in that time, that frame where you just have to trust. And in so many ways, that has been the story of my life, where my career path would make no sense. Like if we went to some business school and said, here's your career path, follow that. They would go, no, that's the path to homelessness. And in some ways for me it was, apparently. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So as we think through what is mission, vision, and calling? Why is it important? One of the things that when I teach it at Cornerstone, and I'm not going to do this with you because the students, they have a vested interest in paying attention and not harming me during this exercise because they need me to give them an A. You guys don't have that vested interest, and I don't trust you that much yet. But one of the things that I do is I will stand in front of the class, and I'll say, everyone get out a pen. And on the count of 3, I want you to throw your pen. I know, but it's college. So I will say 1, 2, 3, and here's inevitably what happens. A certain portion of people think that I'm the target, and they throw their pen at me. Those people do not get A's. Other people drop their pen or throw it off in one direction or another, and about half the room won't do anything with their pen. We're not supposed to throw pens. My mom told me it's only funny until someone loses an eye. You can't throw a pen. So then I have them pick up their pens, and I go to the whiteboard, and I draw a target. On the count of 3, and I'm going to stand over here. On the count of 3, everyone throw your pen at that target, and your goal is to get as close to the bullseye on that target as you possibly can. 1, 2, 3. Everyone in the room throws their pen. What's the difference? What's the difference? There's a target, there's a vision, there's a mission, there's some direction, right? They didn't know what to do before that. What do you mean throw the pen? Should I trust this person? Who is this person? I've just met him. Throw the pen. I'm not supposed to throw my pen. Is this a trick? Okay, here's a target. Everyone do this. This is what you're supposed to be doing, right? That's the difference. The scriptures say, I'm sure you're familiar with the passage in Proverbs that says, without a vision, people will perish. Without a vision, people, that's you and me, will perish. This is so true. And I'm not sure about you, but I found this to be true of individuals and of organizations. So when I came to Mel Trotter in 2012, we found an organization that was doing amazing things, amazing work. For now 117 years, then 112 years, Mel Trotter had been serving the hungry, hurting, and homeless, working for spiritual transformation, physical transformation, working to help people find housing, find jobs, and really move forward in their life and end that cycle of poverty and homelessness. So the organization had a rich history. We were doing amazing things. Our mission statement is to demonstrate the compassion of Christ toward the hungry, hurting, and homeless in the Grand Rapids area. Faith-based organization, our vision statement was to end through the power of Christ, to end homelessness one life at a time in the greater Grand Rapids area. So we had an amazing mission, we had an amazing message, we had a rich history, and we were getting some results. But what became really clear is that we were trying to do things that we had done for a long, long time, and our results were starting to go down. There was less life change. There was less donor interaction, which as a nonprofit, you know, or for me as a nonprofit, I know donor interaction, that's how we exist, right? We have to have donors that buy into our mission. Our organization was actually at risk. We were at risk. And this isn't a comment on any leadership prior or present. I was a part of the executive leadership team. And we were an organization that was greatly at risk because we were becoming irrelevant. And in many ways, whether it was with donors or with guests that we served, we were losing some market share. We were really at a point, a critical point, and we had to ask some really tough questions. What were the challenges that we had? We had decreasing net revenue, which is always a dangerous thing. We had very poor staff morale and culture. In fact, we had an independent company here in town come out and do an anonymous survey of our staff, and 95% of our staff responded to the survey, and here's what they said. It's a culture of fear. We don't know if we're still going to have our job tomorrow or not. We're not sure if what we're doing makes any difference whatsoever. We're not even sure what we're supposed to be doing. 73% of the staff said they had no idea how decisions were made in the organization. And over 85% of the staff said when decisions are made by whoever's making them, we're not included. None of our input is valued. That led to high staff turnover. Our people and our organization felt stuck. There were islands and silos between departments. Does any of this sound familiar, or was it just us? Oh, good, thank you. I feel better now. I believe that conflict is very healthy, but there is also unhealthy conflict. And we had very unhealthy conflict that would become personal before it became anything else. So we were faced with this organization that had this rich history, this amazing vision, this calling, but we weren't doing well. We were really at risk. So we started evaluating everything that we were doing. What have we been doing? What haven't we been doing? What should we be doing? What is working? What is not working? And it led us to this intersection right here. Have you guys been here? The intersection of the same old street and Change Boulevard? Yeah. Same old street's really easy. It's sort of a slow path to dying, but it's a lot easier than change. Have you noticed that everybody loves change until it impacts them? I'm a change agent. Don't ask me to change. Don't ask me to change. And we were really faced with, and I think our board really reflected this, we were faced with change or. Change or what? Change or not be around? Change or lessen our impact? So we started thinking through, how do we look at our organization, even with this rich history, and how do we get us back to where we need to be? When do we do this? Why would we do this? What are we trying to do? And that led us to the 5 questions that changed everything. And I have to share with you that if you study leadership, none of what I'm about to tell you is rocket science. But you're going to see influences from Drucker, from Covey, Collins, Lencioni, Scripture. I believe the number one leader we've ever had is Jesus. I think if we follow Jesus' leadership, we'll be doing okay. So this is not something that came out of my head. It came out of a lot of study, a lot of research, a lot of prayer, and a lot of trying to pull a lot of things together. And I'll be using Mel Trotter through the presentation to talk about the 5 questions because it's a good frame of reference. And what I found is that most of us as people, I think all of us are people, but what I found is that most people relate better to story. It's why we watch movies. It's why we read books. It's why we do these things. In fact, we just got back, Abby and I, from D.C. We were there all week. Rescue mission leaders from around the country go to D.C. every March, and we get this incredible, humbling opportunity to meet with senators and congressmen and different department heads to advocate on behalf of those experiencing homelessness and poverty. So you can imagine being in Washington in this current climate was really interesting. I may not recover for a few months. But as we sat with these leaders, I found that some people were numbers people, but not many. Most of the time when we got their attention is when we said, hey, I want to tell you about this guy named Lee. Lee's been addicted, drunk, and homeless for 30 years. And then 2 years ago, he decided to change his life. 2 years ago, after building relationships with our nurses for almost 30 years, he looked up at one of the nurses and said, I can't do this anymore, I'm done. So Lee was either in jail or drunk in the mission every day, 365 days a year, for 30 years. All of us would have given up on him. Our culture sure did. And Lee says, I want to change. So he went into our detox program that our nurses run. Then he went into the recovery program. Then he went into our job training program. And now Lee, for 2 years, has been sober. He had one relapse for 1 day, but he's been sober. He has his own apartment. He actually went and got himself certified as an addiction recovery counselor. How cool is that? I mean, the Dutch guy from Holland, I don't have a whole lot of stories that can relate. He can relate. Living on his own, and he comes back to the mission every single day, and he volunteers with the men and women that are laying in the bed that he used to lay in. And he helps clean their vomit, and he prays over them, and he says, you can do it. You know, because look at me. Remember, we used to be under the bridge together. Look at me. When we tell those stories, people are moved. Of course, Dean is here from the YMCA, and he and I worked together for about 10 years. And in YMCA language, when you tell a story to a donor, you get the tear, and when you have the tear, you have their checkbook, right, Dean? Still the method. Yeah, it serves us well. So the 5 questions. The first question that we asked of ourselves, what if we as an organization no longer existed? Simple question to understand, but a pretty profound one to really think through and answer honestly. What if we as an organization no longer existed? What difference would that make to our community? What difference would it make to anyone? A related thought, a related question that I've sometimes shared with businesses, sort of a branch off that same question is, why do people give us money? Whether they're buying your product or whether you're a nonprofit that they're donating to, of all the choices that we have, why your organization, right? What if we no longer existed? So for us at Mel Trotter, that was a really interesting question. Well, we have a food pantry at Mel Trotter. Right now, Abby's probably saying, don't use that example, but we're going to do it anyway. We have a food pantry at Mel Trotter. We're really good at running the food pantry. But if Mel Trotter closed tomorrow, losing the food pantry would have zero impact on the community. Because there are so many food pantries that we've even talked to them because we all work together. And they said, you know what, yeah, I mean, if you guys didn't have a food pantry anymore, everybody else would just take another few people. Well, that leads to a really interesting question then from a business perspective. If what we're doing doesn't matter, then why are we pouring time and resources into it? Right? Well, if we didn't exist tomorrow, there would be 450 men, women, and children literally living at the mission from newborn all the way up, that would have no place to go. There's no place that can house them tonight. So we'd, as a community, be facing the truth of a child, a newborn, and his mother living under a bridge somewhere. That's a pretty important thing to think about, isn't it? What would it mean if we weren't here? What impact would it have on the community? And that led us to the second question. Okay, if we know the impact, if we know the purpose that we have on our community, then what are we called to do? Why are we here? What's our mission and vision? Is it even relevant? Is it living and breathing, or is it Kodak? Now, some of the millennials will go, Kodak? What's Kodak? Let me tell you what Kodak is. Kodak is a camera company and a film company. Kodak was the number one, some are going, what's film? I was going to go see a movie. I can't explain what film is to you. You put it in a camera, never mind. Camera is something other than your cell phone. I'm just going to go with the people that know what Kodak is. So Kodak was the number one camera company and film company. And all of a sudden, some upstarts decided that maybe we didn't need film for cameras. Maybe there was something called digital. Wouldn't need film. Well, what do you mean wouldn't need film? I am used to getting all those pictures on a film, taking the little roll to Meyer, putting it in the envelope, putting my name on there, waiting 3, 4, sometimes 5 days to get pictures. Can you imagine, millennials? You take a selfie and you don't get it back for 5 days. And the selfie's really hard because you can't, the cameras are big, right? Kodak said, digital? Who are they to tell us how to do photos? And Kodak almost died. They lost the majority of the market share, and they almost died because they said, you know how long we've been around? We know what we're doing, and we're going to keep doing it because it works. And they almost died because they wouldn't change. Is it living or breathing? So we looked at what are we called to do? Okay, if we know what impact we have on the community, what are we called to do? Well, for us, we went right back to our mission and vision. We are called to demonstrate the compassion of Christ to the hungry, hurting, and homeless. A really important statement for us because it says demonstrate, not talk about. Do something. Compassion of who? Me? I'm not that compassionate, especially on a Friday morning at 9 o'clock. Catch me between 10 and 2, Tuesdays through Thursdays. My compassion comes and goes. Whose compassion is always there? Jesus. So demonstrate the compassion of Christ to who? The hungry, hurting, and homeless. Because there's a lot of people out there that need compassion. But who are we called to touch? So it was really narrowing down who is our target audience and what is it that we're trying to bring to them. And our vision, what are we trying to do? The reputation that Mel Trotter had, in the social services field at least, for quite a while was that we were trying to manage homelessness, we weren't trying to end it. Ouch. And some people that really were not very kind said things like, it's really good business to manage homelessness. You can raise $6 million a year managing homelessness. Why would you want to do something different and not have any homeless to manage? I tell people the day that we have taken care of all the homeless and there are no more coming, we'll find something else to do at Mel Trotter. That'll be a really, really good day. We'll find some other ministry to do. So we went back to our mission and vision and said, this is what we're called to do. So remember the food pantry? Doesn't really fit well with our mission and vision. Plus, there's not a huge impact on the community if we weren't there. So question 3, what are we the best at? Well, we were really good at food pantry. We are really good at food pantry. We're really good at sheltering people, giving them a safe place to come in and to stay. We're really, really good at ministry. Something that is hugely important to the community that we're called to do is a recovery program. Because many, as you know, many of the people that are experiencing homelessness have mental illness, and many of them, along with that mental illness, have addictions. We're one of the only free addiction treatment programs. So you can go to Pine Rest, wonderful program, costs a lot of money, and if you don't have insurance, you're certainly not going there. Well, if we didn't have a recovery program, that would have a huge negative impact on our community. It certainly fits with our mission and vision, but we were terrible at it. Isn't it like it's humbling to stand up here and say to you guys, I want to go, we're the best at everything. We were awful at something that we were supposed to do. Which, by the way, is the first step, right? AA, admit you have a problem, first step, right? If your business needs some corporate AA, the first step is to admit you have a problem, right? So we stopped our recovery program. Yep. We didn't stop working with people that had addictions. We didn't turn anybody away. But we stopped the program until we could make it a core competency. So our staff took about 9 months and revamped a program, playing on our strengths, and then this is the other key, understanding and identifying and accepting our weaknesses and planning about what to do with them. So one of the things that we realized was we're really great at a lot of things, but we're not great at certified substance abuse recovery. Okay, we have a decision. We can send staff. In fact, we actually were talking to Western about they were going to give us a deal on sending our staff through a 2-year program to get certified, and it was going to be wonderful. We almost did that until we thought, wait a minute, why wouldn't we partner with somebody that is an expert? So we sat down with Arbor Circle and we said, and with Network 180, and we said, can you guys help us? So now we have 40 hours a week of certified addiction recovery counselors coming into the mission from Arbor Circle, doing that pure recovery piece, and then we come around with ministry and job training and all of that kind of stuff, and we're seeing more people leave addiction and become productive members of society than we've ever seen before, right? So I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. What are our core competencies? What are we the best at? So those first 3 questions, they're more internal. It's almost like a SWOT analysis. It's almost like looking at strengths, right? Strengths and weaknesses. They're kind of uncomfortable. They lay the foundation for the future, and they began to move us, and I think will begin to move everyone here, toward clarity. But we can't just stay there. You know, when a different job that I had before Mel Trotter, I interviewed for the executive director job, and I was meeting with the board, and I said, have you had a strategic plan? And they said, yes, we have. And I'm like, great, can I see it? And they're like, they went over to the shelf, and it was like there were 2 dusty books on the shelf, the Bible and the strategic plan. And they said, well, here it is. So I took it home with me as I was interviewing, or after the interview, and I'm leafing through this, and this is a really great strategic plan. So my next interview, I said, this is great, a little dusty, but great. How much have you done? This is from 4 years ago. How much have you done? Crickets in the room. So you spent all this time to do a strategic plan, and 4 years later, you've done nothing. Nothing has changed. Nothing in this plan has happened. A lot of reasons for that. I thought they were doing it. I thought they were doing it. I didn't have to do it. Did I have to do it? Right? It sat on the shelf and it gathered dust. So it begins to move us, and it leads us to the next 2 questions. Question 4, where are the gaps? So in our situation, we looked at this and we said, where are the places that our products and services are needed or not adequately available? How do we reach more people? And how do we build on our core competencies and develop partnerships in other ways? So for us and what we're doing in the mission, we identified at that time 5 gaps in the community that were not being covered well by anyone. One gap was families. Fastest growing homeless demographic is families and unaccompanied youth. There are 32 family shelters in Grand Rapids. 22 of them are at the mission. All 32 are filled all the time. The great news, last year we got 124 families on a 60-day average from homelessness to homes and income. Isn't that awesome? Here's the tough news. Right now there's 191 families on a waiting list for 32 shelter units. That's 500 kids that are out in the street somewhere, right? So we said families are not being covered. So I told you there was 32 family rooms, 22 at Mel Trotter. At the time that we did this question, there were 10 family rooms, 0 at Mel Trotter. And we repurposed 2 floors, 22 apartments, and said these have to be for families. But guess what? We've never done families. We're not good at families. So we got with Family Promise Ministries, and we got with ICCF, Intercity Christian Federation, and we said, let's do this together. And we now have 3 full-time staff from Family Promise that work in our building. They're paid by Family Promise, they're working in our building, and together with their core competencies and ours together, we got 124 families out of homelessness on an average of 60 days, right? So how do these, you see how this is kind of progressing. When you start asking these questions, it opens you up to new possibilities, and suddenly you're not quite as territorial as you were. Second gap was youth, homeless youth. On any given night, we know this from HQ, which is a teen drop-in center that opened a couple of years ago. On any given night, there's up to 200 homeless and unaccompanied youth in Grand Rapids. Youth defined at that point as 18 to 24, but it really goes down to 14, 16 to 24. 40% of them are homeless because they aged out of the foster care system, and there was no government or parental support for them. And 40% of them are homeless because they identified to their parents as lesbian, gay, bi, or trans, and their parents disowned them, and now they're on the street with no support system, right? So we said, why don't they come to us? We have beds. Remember that humility thing? We asked them, we said, why don't you come to us? They said, do you really want to know? Because I don't think you really want to know. Yeah. Because we've come to you and we've stayed an hour and we've left because we don't feel safe, we don't feel welcome. Right? I mean, I'm sharing this with you. I'm like opening this up. Watch, my donations will go down next week. Because I hope that you can do it with yourself and with your organization. You can't grow and get better if you're not open and honest with yourself, with your team, with your organization. So we said, okay, what will make it better? So we sat down with the youth, and they designed this beautiful pilot program with separate entrances, a separate shower. We opened it a year ago, February 15. It's been full every night, and we've served 90 youth, and most of them have come into one of our programs, and now we're in successful housing. And that's launching us to, in April, we're going to actually open a house on Madison Street, which will be kind of a phase 2 with the house parent, and a phase 2 to make sure that they can succeed, right? Third gap was the LBGT community. Fourth gap was people experiencing mental illness. 70% of the homeless that you see on the street are severely mentally ill and will not be able to provide for themselves. If you're old like me, you'll remember 30, 40 years ago, we closed the mental health institutions in the country without an answer. And the answer has become the jails, the shelters, and the bridges where there's no mental health workers. And we have a wonderful mental health system here, but they're overwhelmed, and they certainly have a hard time connecting with the homeless. So we as a community have to do that. So we've opened special programs in partnership with Pine Rest and Network 180 to look at how do we serve them better. And then there's the fifth category was the people that are homeless that are getting out of the hospital and have no place to recover. So they cost you and I, the taxpayer, millions, if not billions of dollars every year because they keep going back in the hospital for the exact same thing because they've never recovered well, right? And now we would add a sixth gap, which is the rural community. There are as many homeless in the rural communities as there are here. It's just that here we see them. Cedar Springs School District right now has 53 students that they know of. They're either sleeping in cars or tents with their family, and they never get counted, so we're trying to reach out to them. So where are the gaps? And then the fifth and most important question after you've asked all four of those questions are, what now? Because it's one thing to gather all this data, but it's another thing to figure out what are we going to do with it. So what now? What about the things we don't do well? If it's in our mission, in our vision, in our calling, then let's do something about that. Let's partner with somebody. How do we broaden our base? For us, this was the foundation of a new strategic plan that is a living and breathing document, and it's what guides every single decision. We went through a process, almost 2 years with board and staff, to answer these questions and have it come right into a strategic plan that's really the lifeblood of our organization. So it's those questions that really changed everything for our organization. And the interesting thing about that is, you might say, okay, fine, but what are the results? We now have what Collins would say in From Good to Great, the right staff on the right bus. That is so refreshing. That did mean some hard conversations with some staff that were either the right staff at the wrong seat of the bus, or they were on completely the wrong bus. And we had to have the intestinal courage to have conversations with people and either move them to the right seat or help them find a different bus. Because without it, our organization would have stayed on same old street and we would have kept going. Same direction, same language. I'm pretty confident right now that you could have had anyone from Mel Trotter come up here this morning, and I think the language would have been the same. We're speaking the same language, the same direction. We went from high turnover of over 45% every year to, I just found out 2 days ago, for the second year in a row, we are now one of the 101 brightest and best companies to work for in West Michigan. And that is not because I get to tell them things that aren't true and they give us an award. It's anonymous surveys to our staff. And based on those surveys, they determine who wins. So we've gone from culture of fear, 45% turnover every year, to one of second year running of 101 best places to work for. We have a new energy internally and externally around our organization. It seems normal to us, but when people from the outside come in and take a tour, there's two things they always say when they leave. I never knew you guys did more than just shelter people and run a soup kitchen. Yeah, we do quite a bit more. And the second thing they say is, I think I want to work here because I've never been at a place where everyone is so happy. I'm like, really? They're like, your staff are happy. Wow, that wasn't said of us not too long ago. It's provided humble opportunities for us to move forward and to, in some ways, lead the direction of where missions are going. Especially with a lot of things that are happening in Washington right now. Even with the new budget proposal, I know we shouldn't get political and I'm not going to, but the new budget proposal and some of the healthcare proposals, if passed as are, will have devastating impacts. We will see many, many more poor in the streets that we have to work with, and many more people that are getting inadequate health care. So hopefully we can come together and find some things that work. But we have to be out there. We have to be sharing these things. So we're talking about some collaborations that even involve physical buildings with other organizations where we can kind of get ahead of maybe where this trend is going. Partnerships and collaborations. Mel Trotter honestly went from 10 years ago, we were the nonprofit organization that partnered the least in this community, to now I am confident to say we're the nonprofit in Grand Rapids that has the most partnerships and collaboration of any other nonprofit. Because we said we know what we're good at, so let's partner with somebody that can complement our weaknesses. And then we have a new commitment to our core mission, vision, and calling. We've had some people, I'm going to talk faith here for a second and start making a transition. We've lost some churches that supported us because through this change, they've said, well, I don't think Mel Trotter is about Jesus or the gospel anymore. Thank you for laughing, Todd. That warmed my heart. Abby, we give him $20? How did that happen? Well, the old mission model around the country has been, in some places, not all, almost what I would call something manipulative. Yeah, we'll give you a bed and we'll give you a warm place to sleep and we'll give you some food, but you got to go to chapel first. And ideally, if you behave in chapel and maybe even respond to the altar call, we got a nicer bed over here for you. Not real effective. Not real effective sometimes, but not real effective. And when we got there, we audited the chapel services. We have churches that come in every night and do chapel. And what we learned about the churches was, not all, but a lot of the churches were bringing in sort of that guy in your church who always wants to preach when the pastor is gone, but you would never let him preach. Well, let's send him down to the mission. He'll be happy. Which makes a comment about the value of the people experiencing homelessness, doesn't it? So we had fourth and fifth tier people. And here was the message, and I apologize, I know this is an auspicious occasion, but I just got to tell it like it is. Here was, if I could sum up the message of the churches, it was essentially this: you suck. You really suck. Now respond to the altar call. You're still going to suck, but at least you won't burn in hell. So we sat down with our churches and we said, there's this verse, John 3:17, that says, Jesus Christ came not to condemn the world, but to love it and save it. The people that we work with they know they've made bad decisions. They don't need to be told, hey, being a crack dealer, not good. Being a prostitute, probably not your best career path. You know what they're wondering? Jesus can't love me. Of course he could love you. Look at you guys, you're in suits. Of course Jesus loves you. But not me, I was a prostitute. Not me, I was smoking crack under the bridge. Not me, I was in jail for armed robbery. Our guests don't need to hear how bad they are. They need to hear how good God is. Amen. So when we shared that message, we lost 10% of our churches and the funding that went with it because they said we were no longer about the gospel. So then we said, well, if we're on that path, let's just ramp it up a little bit. So we said, it sounds like we're going in the right direction, so let's see what else we can do. Because, as I read the Gospels, Jesus never made the sinners mad. He always made the church mad. Right? So I'm like, we are on the path. We don't walk on water yet, but we don't. So we researched other models of how some other missions are doing chapel, and I made a joke about Holland, so now I'm going to give them some props. Holland was modeling a new kind of chapel with a church where they asked the church to bring their A-team. Right? If you're from a large mega church, you know exactly what I mean. If you're from a 150-member church, which is awesome, you'd be like, we only have an A-team. Awesome, bring them. Bring your A-team in worship, bring your A-team in pastor, bring your kids' ministry, and bring at least 50 people from your church. And you know what happened? All of a sudden, you walked into chapel services and you couldn't tell who was homeless and who was from the church because they were all sitting together. And we said, don't plan on an hour, plan on a couple, because we're going to do service for probably about 45 minutes, but we're going to have some church outside of that 45 minutes, right? And you know what happened? All of a sudden, relationships started happening. We heard in Washington, D.C. today this new phrase, or this week, this new phrase that I'm going to coin as mine. No one becomes homeless because of a lack of money. People become homeless because of a lack of relationship. And we now have 4 churches that have partnered with us to do this new kind of chapel. And 82 people in the last 3 months through this new chapel, 82 unique people, not the same 3 guys coming up every night. 82 unique people have come to faith in Jesus Christ in the last 3 months. And not only that, they didn't okay, you did the altar call, now soup is over there, salad's over there, and see you in heaven. They're being discipled by those churches. They're being invited by those churches. That's what we're talking about, right? So that's what this path, that's where these 5 questions led. So as I start wrapping up, the thing that really hits me about these 5 questions is I think they're really important and can be very useful for your organizations, but I think these 5 questions actually also can be extremely useful, if not more useful, for our own personal hearts. I was asked to share at the end a part of my personal testimony. And I grew up in a Christian home in Holland. We went to church for some of you millennials, church used to be Sunday morning and Sunday night. And we were there all the time. And we were there on Wednesdays. And we were there, we were there. We were there a lot. And for me, I remember at a really young age, we went to this Bible conference with my family. And we were at this night seminar. And for whatever reason, we were in the front row. And this preacher was just screaming about heaven and hell. Well, he's really screaming about hell more than anything. And it's like he looked right down at me and pointed at me and said, "You're going to burn in hell unless you repent and turn to Jesus." I am 6 years old. First of all, I'm thinking, he swore and we're in church, which I thought was cool, but then I got really scared. So we went home after the conference, and about 3 or 4 nights later, I could not sleep because I could feel the fire under my bed. I was like, I am already there. I don't know what I could have done that's so bad at 6 years old, but whatever it is, it's getting hot in here. So I go downstairs and I'll think, "Mom, I don't want to burn." And she said, "Well, then just repeat this prayer after me." So I did that. Now, I have to be really honest, and this is my story, so I'm not trying to say it's the story or everyone's story. But for me, I only focused on the question of what if I no longer existed? And for the next 14 years of my life, I prayed that same prayer almost every night. I'm so scared of burning. God, please come into my heart. I'm so sorry for the sins that I did. I forgive you. I know that you're Jesus. You died on the cross. Please come into my heart. That's all it was about for me. It was about making sure that I didn't die. And when I got into my teenage years, because of some things going on in my family and in our church, I started figuring out that if it's really just about if I go to heaven or hell, I can pretty much do whatever I want. And in my teenage years, I did whatever I wanted, as I was the president of the youth group. So I could lead a devotion on Wednesday night and lead some awesome prayers on Wednesday night in youth group, and on Friday night, I could look like anything but a person that followed Jesus. So a bunch of friends and I, who all grew up in Christian homes as well, we all moved to Indiana Street by the zoo, because we were going to Grand Rapids Junior College. And one Saturday night, we had this rip-roaring party. I mean, 3 a.m. is when everybody left. And I remember one of my friends, and I don't know why, one of my friends says, hey, maybe we should go to church tomorrow. Where would we go? You're Reformed, you're Christian Reformed, you're Baptist, I was independent fundamentalist. Where would we go? I have a confession to make. One of the guys says, I heard about this really big church on the Beltline called Calvary, and all the Calvin women go there. That was all we needed to hear. All the Calvin women are there, we are there. So we went to we went to Calvary. And it was Ed Dobson's very first Sunday. And 4 guys who were a little tipsy from the night before, probably didn't smell real good, who had grown up in Christian homes, heard about a Jesus they'd never heard about before. We heard about Jesus that cared about our eternal existence, but cared just as much about our right here and now. A Jesus who cared about the things that we cared about. A Jesus who was calling us to live a new kind of life. Which was the second question that we wrestled with then. What am I called to do? Why am I here? Within a year of that sermon, my entire friend base changed. And I entered YMCA Camp Manitoulin for what I thought was going to be one summer, and there are a lot of girls that work there. I thought that would work. And I ended up staying there for 10 years because I was engaged with this Jesus and other people that loved him that I had never heard about before, that wanted me to be in heaven when I died, but wanted me to help bring God's kingdom to earth right here and right now. It changed everything. It changed everything. So I said, what are my gifts and strengths? Well, maybe I can do some of this stuff. Maybe I could lead camps. So we did that for 17 years. Well, yeah, I'm feeling maybe God wants me to be a pastor. Okay, let's do that. So we joined some churches as youth pastors, just growing these gifts, these strengths. And then we were feeling restless. And I don't know about you, but in my church we sing a song where part of the song goes, break my heart for what breaks yours, everything I am for your kingdom's cause. Show me how to love like you have loved me. My wife and I started praying that. Be careful what you pray for. Found myself without a job. God, what are you doing to me? I lost my job. I have 4 kids. Keep praying the prayer. My wife comes to me and says, look at this ad for the vice president of programs at Mel Trotter Ministries. I said, look, I am not going to work with the homeless, and I am not going to the inner city. Like, no, that is not what God has for me. She's like, I think you should pray about it. Here's what I've learned. When you say no to your wife and God, you may as well lay it down because you have lost the battle. It is over. Started praying, and wouldn't you know it, the day my severance package ran out was the day that I started at Mel Trotter Ministries. Is God good or what? So my testimony is one that says, where are the gaps For me, it's the hungry, hurting, and homeless. Now what? For me, it's giving everything to this Jesus that I love, who saved me, who I can't wait to be with someday, but who I try my best to follow every single minute of every day. And if I'm honest, I fail much more than I succeed. But I think the calling of Jesus is to say, okay, get up, because I'm with you. Let's walk on to the next one. So thank you so much for having me. I hope something was helpful, and I'll turn it over to these guys.
Thank you for putting me on first, right after Dennis. You're going to see a vast difference between a person that's lived it and a person who just talks about it. But I hope that you're going to, I hope you did listen to what he had to say, and I hope you took good notes. You're going to see a person who has lived a lot about what I'm going to be talking to you about today. First, good morning. Thank you for being here. Glad you're here and not someplace else, because we wouldn't be able to interact with you. And I hope you're here because you want to improve yourself, your business, your family. That's why we're here. I have to check sometimes because I'm never quite sure. I used to travel internationally a lot, and my wife had a picture of me at the front door to check. Make sure I met. I'm kind of used to that. I'd be gone for a month at a time. So, coming home, it's like, I think I notice familiarity, but I'm not quite sure. Say something to me. At any rate, Dennis has lived what I'm going to be talking about. I hope you'll see some threads of commonality to what he has been talking about with regard to the Meltrider Ministries. But strategy really is not a part of that connection today unless you actually make it so. So we're going to be talking about strategy. And it is actually very easy. There's no reason to make it hard. There's a lot of misconceptions about strategy. In fact, the word itself comes from the Greek strategos, which is general meaning for a military general. And it's the responsibility of the military general to position the forces for battle, to be victorious. And position is the key word. You want to be in the right place at the right time in order to meet the challenges that you're going to face. Now, strategy is not just for the military. It's all about winning and being successful, but you can be winning and successful in your business life, your personal life, family life. Everything comes together when you have a clear idea of what you're trying to accomplish. So we're going to talk about strategy from that point of view. And remember, position is the key word. For example, if I wanted to make an acquaintance, it's very difficult for me to meet somebody and shake their hand. Hi, I'm Bill. Joanne, nice to meet you. I couldn't do that from over there. So I had to put myself in a position to be successful in the outreach. Dennis talked a lot about outreach. If you're not putting yourself into the community, how can you possibly engage? So we're going to talk about the mindset. Now I'm going to use some metaphors. Hope you'll pardon maybe the overuse of metaphors, but strategy is like a bridge. It provides a link between where you are and where you want to be. So keep that image in mind. Now, any of you know what this bridge is? Okay, you recognize that bridge? Do you know how it was named? The builder, the architect, was there on site. They were putting up the very tall stanchions there. The young man sitting on the shore, his eyes were big as saucers. His mother was there with him, and his jaw just dropped. He couldn't believe how overwhelming this bridge was. So the architect came over, and Mother introduced him to Mac. And Mac was just a gate. How can this possibly be so big? Well, the architect said, you know what? I think because of your real impact here, we're going to name the bridge after you. So they named it Mac in awe of the bridge. It's a true story. Right? No? All right. Moving on. All right. Before we get too involved in what strategy is, I'd like to spend a few seconds, because we only have a few seconds, on what it is not. I think, Dennis, you illustrated perfectly. In fact, you stole most of my talk here. So well, I'll attribute a lot of this to you. It's not just a plan, whether written or unwritten. It's not just a slice in time. It's not something you do every 5 years. Dennis, you mentioned the Dusty plan. How many of you have seen in your businesses the 5-year plan? Where is it now? In the drawer? Or in the dusty binder? When's the last time you referred to it? Okay, that's often the case with strategy. It's the thing to do, so we do it, but then we put it away and get back to business. Oops, I keep doing this. All right. It is also not just thinking about the future. Battles are fought in the here and now. You're dealing with the present. It's great to think about the future, but that's not really strategy. That's a part of it. It's also not something you need a PhD to do. Although, you know, it's not rocket science, as Dennis mentioned, but it did get us to the moon and back. You remember John F. Kennedy proclaiming to our country that we were going to go to the moon, going to send a man to the moon and return him safely. That was the hard part. Getting there wasn't too bad. Getting home, that's a bit more difficult. He had a strategy. He put the country into a mindset, into a position that we could do this. And what happened in 1969? The man walked on the moon. He also got home, which is the good part. Now, it doesn't take a president, and it's not something that just upper management is charged with. Strategy is for anybody and everybody who wants to be successful, who wants to win consistently. We'll talk about what strategy is then. Well, strategy basically is a mindset. It's a capability to position yourself to be successful at every opportunity. It's a way of thinking. It's a way of doing. But you're always thinking about how you can match your performance to your vision. It's ongoing. It's never an occasional event where you sit down, you do strategy, then you go back to business. It's every day. A lot of people don't understand that. You have to attend to your positioning at all times and make adjustments if appropriate, because it's ongoing planning and adapting. It's repositioning, being ready at the next turn to meet the challenge you face. The past and the present help us to create the future we want. We learn in the past, we apply that learning in the present. We look for patterns that help us understand how the world works. We then anticipate the future and ready ourselves to meet the future. As I mentioned, it's conducted by everybody at every level. If your organization isn't being strategic at all levels, you're not being strategic. And you won't meet the success you hope for because you'll be unprepared. You'll be in the wrong position. Joanne, I can't get to you. I'm over here. Anticipating and responding to change is ongoing. But we have to do it before, during, and after. That's the learning process that Michelle and Melissa are going to talk about. Continuing to stay engaged with your world and your business, making sure that you stay on course. Now, there's a need to build your strategy on a firm foundation. And what we look to, I think you recognize the story about building a house on the sand versus building it on a rock. What happens with the sand? It can erode and you're left with nothing. You don't have any place to stand. What happens when you build it on the rock? It's solid. It's a firm foundation from which you can live. Now, the rock is just a metaphor for basic principles. Principles are nothing more than fundamental truth. You'll find those in many texts. I think it was very interesting that you mentioned the first business book on your slide there is Scripture. A lot of folks don't think about the Bible as being a business book, but it's full of principles. Principles are those fundamental truths that produce predictable, consistent results, unless you violate them. Okay, then you get something else. But these principles, for example, the laws of physics, for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. Remember that one from school? How about trust is earned by being trustworthy in your relationships? That's a fundamental principle. It works every time, unless you violate it. Another is honesty is the best policy. Honesty is also a good memory aid. You don't have to remember who you lied to when. So it's easier to get through life. So these principles guide you toward the results that you want. Values are those principles that we've chosen to live our life by. Okay, we call it core values. Those few that we focus on to make our decisions much easier every day, that's our value system. Okay? Again, there's still principles because they lead us to the right decisions. Now, your vision that Dennis talked about is shaped by your values. Okay? Your ideal state, your future state that you project, that you want to go to, from where you are to where you want to be, shaped by your values. So your vision becomes your values brought to life. Very vivid color. And if you see that and that image is indelible, it's much easier to follow. Now the issue for a lot of people is we want to jump from vision directly to mission. That's the doing. And Dennis mentioned how important that the doing is, having to be there and actually minister to the homeless. The problem is, have you ever heard of the phrase, getting off on the wrong foot? Like I'm probably going to trip over here and then get off on the wrong foot, or wake up on the wrong side of the bed, or being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes just doing isn't the right thing to do. You have to guide that doing to a point where it really does follow the principles you're believing in. So in that sense, the strategy, the thinking, the understanding, the positioning becomes the bridge between dreaming and doing. They say that vision without action is dreaming. Action without vision is wandering. You don't want to wander through life because the results are not what you want. You might get lucky, you might stumble upon some success, but then you might not. So be thinking, and I want you to keep that in mind, that where you are, where you want to go, you're going to need that link, that connector. This is what strategy can do for you. Because you want to get here, and that's the straightest path. Now, use a couple other metaphors. The night sky, the sky that we saw coming here today, okay? You look up into the sky, and you see the trillions upon trillions of stars, the Milky Way. It's overwhelming. You think, my gosh, how do you make sense of all this? How do I fit into this universe? Well, again, we look, as humans, we look for things that are familiar to us. So we look for patterns in the stars. Any of you recognize this constellation? It's called the Big Dipper. It helps us construct some sort of connection that we fit into this universe. We're part of it. Did you ever notice that the bottom two stars point to another star? You know what that star is? It's the North Star, okay? Now, at nighttime, those constellations move through the sky, so it's a moving target. What about the North Star? It doesn't move, it stays right there. This is where the ancient sailors used to use the North Star as a frame of reference, so they always knew where they were to help them go where they needed to go. That North Star is there for you at all times. But the stars have to align in a way that makes sense to you. So let's go back down to our earthly dwelling here. Use another metaphor as a house. Now, a house is our place on earth. It's our place to feel comfortable and to feel safe. How many of you have an image in mind of a dream house that you'd like to occupy at some point in time? You look in those magazines, you go, wow, wow. Anybody have an idea what? How many of you grew up in a house? How many know what a house is? All right, I want to get everybody in this. Well, as Dennis mentioned, some people don't have that experience. Okay? We do. We have a frame of reference. Now, before you built the house, you had that vision in mind. But what did you have in front of you? You had a pile of lumber, bricks, some wires, some nails, some mortar. So what changed between those piles of raw materials and the final product? Position of those raw materials. They're now aligned, okay? You got the straight walls, you got the square corners, you got the roof over your head. Now, if the roof leaks, call Jeffrey, because he's got some people to help you out. But the alignment, that's where the magic is. That's where the really coming together took place. How did you get there from that pile of bricks to the finished product? Well, you had in mind a plan. The architect would use blueprint, a map, a way of getting things aligned so that you end up where you want to be. So that strategy or that map or that blueprint is the connector between where you are and where you want to be. Now, as you, and I hope, many times we have our walls cluttered with pictures and stuff. As I work with folks, I try to help them understand you need a blank canvas. If you're going to create your future, you need space. You need a place where you can think, understand your challenges and your strengths, and put them up there so you can see the picture as a whole. So clear your walls. A tool that I like to use that goes up on the wall is called a force field diagram. Where you are, where you want to be, there's a transitional dynamic here, and you're right in the middle. You're making it happen. But they're also an illustration of the forces that are working on you, forces that help move you toward your goal, forces that hinder, stand in your way. Now, I'll go back to the star analogy. The stars are those things that are helpers, that help you shine more brightly. Now, if you don't have them, you have to get them. But if you have them, and they're not quite shiny enough, you have to enhance them, either through training or learning of some sort. But a lot of us have hidden strengths that we have to reveal. And it's very important that you have them up there because you can see how they connect and how they enhance and enlarge each other. So it's important you have them up there on the wall. On the other side, you have the black holes, things that just suck the life out of you, things that pull you down and keep you from getting where you want to go. It's also very important to understand those, because now you can see how they interact and how they relate. It's very important then that you focus on the critical few, the ones that really make the difference. You've heard the Pareto principle, the 80-20. 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. I'll take that a step further. I use what I call 5-50. That 50% of your outcomes are the result of only 5% of your effort, 5% of your decisions. It's those critical few that make the difference. It's not that you're going to forget the rest, but if you lose sight of these, you're lost. So keep these in mind and prioritize them, put them up on the wall, make sure they're visible every day so you can interact with your own brain. And then what I want you to do is think about how do you weave them together into a coherent plan, a map, a blueprint forward for your life. Each of these, you probably can't read them in the back, but each of these is a potential star or a potential black hole. You may have strength in these areas, and these are certainly not exhaustive. There are many more areas you might think about. But each of these has to be woven into a fabric that will carry you forward. Understanding that it's not a one-off. The emphasis on the N-I-N-G, the planning aspect, it's a continual, ongoing, thinking through, behaving, acting, readjusting. This will lead you to your strategic goals. Because it's just like the blueprint, you have a pattern. This step comes next, and the sequencing and the priority become very evident because it's there. nice thing too is this then becomes a communication tool. If you're dealing with an organization, it's very rare that people succeed in life on their own efforts alone. Most time you need to enlist the help of others. This is a great communication tool to help them understand what you're all about. Just like you went to the various donors and helped them understand what Mel Trotter's ministry was all about. They need to see your thinking, that you do have a plan, that you have a way to pull it all together that includes them, and you need them and they need you. So this is a great communication tool for that purpose. But sometimes we focus on the physical or the earthly elements. We put that into a strategic plan. There's often one star that we forget to put in there, and it's a very important star, because sometimes we feel a little lost. On a clear night sky, it's great, you look up and see the stars, but what happens when it's cloudy or when it's stormy and you can't see it? That's when you need a GPS. Okay? Now this isn't a Garmin. It's a different kind of GPS. It's more of an internal compass. But when you have this compass, even when it's cloudy, when it's stormy, or when it's sleety, this will guide you. So if you put this GPS into motion, everything falls into place. It's God's plan for your salvation. And you'll find that in that business book that Dennis referenced, John 3:16. You're a part of God's plan if you let it happen. Don't shut it out. Make sure you put it into your strategy, because that's your blueprint. That's your blueprint for success. And if it's not there, if you think, well, everybody knows that that's just a part of it, no, not everybody knows. And you have to be, again, as Dennis mentioned, that witness. You have to let people know that this is what's driving you, because that brings them closer to you. It brings Joanne over here so I don't have to go quite so far. It lets people know what you're all about. So think about that. What's the next step? Well, the next step is to find your guiding star. Okay, reach out and grab it. But make sure it's the right one, and then begin to build your bridge and get where you want to go and where God has a plan for you to be. So I think we're moving along, so I'll leave it at that and invite the next speaker up. But strategic thinking is something that you need to be doing every day, positioning yourself in the right place at the right time.
I want to thank you to Dennis for your reference of all those leadership books earlier. You see, I am a leadership geek. I love the topic, I research on the topic, I talk to a lot of leadership. It's been a topic of my study for the past 10 years. And I love it, and I have a huge collection of leadership books, and if you talk to me, I will likely send you away with a book recommendation, which those who know me well know that I do that. But about a couple of years ago, God spoke to me, and I had this revelation. I actually proclaimed this at one of the CBRT roundtable, and Pastor Brown can attest to this because he was there. You know, I said, someone asked, you know, where is a good leadership training program or development? You know, and I think about, oh, I should have an answer to this. I've been reading this Harvard Business Review and all the leadership book there is, but I said this, and I said, if we want a great example of leadership, look no further than Jesus. And that all the answer we need about leadership is in the Bible. So about a couple of years ago, if you had a time when God called you to do something, and then like, right now, you want me to do what? But that doesn't make sense. But he said, just do it. So about a couple of years ago, I have this huge collection of business books in my office, and he said, get up and get rid of them. I'm like, huh? I'm like, what do you mean? No, I didn't throw it in the trash or anything. I moved it to the conference room library. He said, get rid of all of them. I want your library be empty, and I want you to put in it my word. And he said, we're going to rebuild your leadership wisdom, starting with my word. So as I prepared for today, before I go to any books, I went to his word, and I prayed for his wisdom. And he lay on my heart to share with you a story about passion and how my journey of living out the passion for my work and how that had taught me to seek above all else growth, maturity, and the pursuit of wisdom. So let's start by talking about the definition of the word passion. If you Google it, the first line of that word will say a strong, uncontrollable emotion. That is why sometimes we use the word passion mostly to describe a romantic relationships or feeling, because when we're in love, we feel that strong, uncontrollable, unexplainable emotion. But the other commonly used purpose for the word passion is when we love what we do, that we enjoy our work so much, that we're so passionate about it, that we do not feel like we're going to work every day. Now, I am going to be talking about that second topic. I don't think I'm quite expert in the first topic yet. So as according to Deloitte Consulting, up to 87.7% of America's workforce are not contributing to their fullest potential because they are not passionate about what they do. Now, for all the business leaders here, let that statistic sink in for you. That means less than 12.3% of your workforce do not possess the attribute of worker passion. Well, what is worker passion? Why is that so important? And why is this gap so scary? Well, I'd like you to think about someone in mind who you know is very passionate about their job. That can be a coworker, that can be a leader, that can be one of your employees, and hopefully that is you, okay? I want you to listen to this list of attributes about worker passion and why they're so powerful. So one, they search for new, better solutions to challenging problems. They take meaningful risks, key the word meaningful, risk to improve performance. They perform at a higher level with each passing year. They work the hours needed to get the job done. And they are well connected to others, internally and externally, within their domain, while they can cut across silos to deliver results. Now, you think about who would want their employees to be worker passion, right? Now, I'd like to take a moment to give you some background about my professional work, to give you some context about my passion. For the last 10 years, I have been studying natural talent and aptitude in candidates and recommending them to the best fit position. Before those years, I was in management consulting, where I have conducted and analyzed talent assessment in the thousands by now. And the rest of those years, I was working for a family-owned, third-generation family-owned business who had a very aggressive growth plan. So we drove a very proactive strategy in talent planning and selection. So that's my passion, is to uncover other people's passion and their talent and put them in the right position and develop sound people system to drive performance and growth. I was and am very proud of my work. I may be lucky enough to say I might be among that 12.3% who's very passionate about my work. But then I learned something else. That contributing to your fullest potential, on another hand, require much learning and leading yourself well so that you can manage your passion properly so that it would create positive impact and not a negative one. Now, you may ask, if passion is so powerful and effective, how could it create a negative impact, right? Now, we're sometimes mistaken to believe that our biggest weaknesses are the things that we cannot do, but when in fact, our biggest weakness comes from the overextension of our strength. You see, our strength has sharp edges that need refinement. Sometimes we can get so passionate about what we do and what we believe in that we get prideful in our own ideal, that we neglect to take into consideration other people's ideas and input. Sometimes we can get so passionate about results and outcome that we start valuing results over relationship. So you see, passion is very powerful, but passion is only potentials and not yet impact. Potentials are like raw materials, and they need to go through a process of change and refinement so they can become a final product. You see, a couple years ago, I have realized this. In our years of hiring professionals, I have met some of the most talented individuals, but watch some of them fail in positions that we knew they were very capable of doing. They failed. And so we start wondering, where did we go wrong in the hiring process? There was a missing ingredient, and that was screening for a level of their maturity and valuing that as a criteria of the hiring process. Because you see, some of those talents fail not because they did not know how to build systems, processes, or accurate forecasting. They were actually amazing at that. But you know why they failed? They failed because they were lacking cultural sensitivity. They were lacking cultural sensitivity and learned a hard lesson that is not about what you know, it's about how you treat people with respect that will be remembered. And those talents fail not because they did not have the talent to be promoted, but because they failed because they got arrogant in their talent and start judging and disrespecting the very leader that they're supposed to serve. And they fail to recognize that leadership is about serving and not about undermining. Those talent failed not because they did not have the passion and the motivation to drive results, but because they were so passionate about what they do that they forgot to seek out and understand the whole situation before they act. You see, I was lucky enough to work for a very wise leader. Probably did not admit it at the time. He spent a lot of time helping, encouraging my talent and passion, as well as much time helping me managing it and refining my approach and how I achieve outcome and results. He had this saying that he promoted with me and others over and over again. He said, when people in a situation tell you something, believe 60% of it. I'm like, huh? Now, that does not mean that we should be naturally skeptical of people or distrusting. But the point here is this. There's always another perspective. There's always another side of the story. There's always more information. And we as leaders, our duties and responsibility to know that situation very, very well so that we can make a wise decision, right? So you see, our talent and passion need to be matured. And I've learned to listen and look for the test of maturity. And during those tests, we will get stretched. And when we're getting stretched, it will be painful. But greater the pain, greater the glory, and greater will be the outcome. See, Pastor Bill Johnson has said this the best. Sometimes our anointing and gifts are ready for the increase of responsibility, but our character isn't. So when promotions come too soon, the impact of our gift can bring a notoriety that becomes the catalyst of our downfall. When the increase of responsibility comes, we want to be able to rise up and lead and not fall. So you see, while you're under those tests, it might be painful, but the purpose of them is to bring greatness out of you. And that is why we boast in suffering, because suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. So if you don't have any discomfort right now, you might sitting there, I cannot relate to anything you're saying. I have got this. I'm great at leading people. I'm great at it. Then I would challenge you to get uncomfortable. Get uncomfortable. Maybe put back your high heels and get going again, but get uncomfortable. Because if you miss that test for maturity, you'll miss the opportunity for self-transformation that's meant to catapult your leadership to the next level. Yeah. So now, okay. a proud mother always looks for opportunity to brag about their children, right? So that I'll admit, I'm bragging about my little man. But I also want to use this to put you in a mind frame to thinking about your life. I've heard people talk about this work-life balance. I have to tell you, I have always struggled with that concept. To think that our lives should be divided up in categories. And there is work over here, and there is your home over here, and the two should be give and take to strike a balance. I always struggle with that concept. But I see them and view them as encompassing of a life that I get to serve with passion and in the present moment, right? So I believe, because the greater that you serve, the greater will be given to you, but we have to serve it with passion, no matter the position that you're in. Just as Dr. King has said it, if a man is called to be a street sweeper, he should sweep the street so well as Michelangelo painted, as Beethoven composed music, as Shakespeare wrote poetry. He should sweep the street so well, all the hosts of heaven and earth will pause and say, here lived the great street sweeper who did his job well. We have that exact responsibility to live a life with full passion in our work and in our home. And we must remember that we will never be tasked with more than we can handle. We as humans have enormous capacity. We have enormous capacity, but we have to learn how to apply our capacity accordingly. Now, I like to hear from an expert on this topic. So before, I hope you remember that before he was a presidential candidate, before he is the HUD secretary, that Dr. Ben Carson is known as a world-renowned brain surgeon. Here's what he has to say about the brain and our capacity.
And when you think about it, you think about the brain that God has given you. We were made in his image, and he's no dummy. You know, your brain has billions and billions of neurons, hundreds of billions of interconnections. It can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. It doesn't forget anything you've ever seen or anything you've ever heard, which is why it's important to make sure you don't put the wrong things in there, because they always will impact upon you, subconsciously and consciously.
You see, our potentials can only be capped by ourselves. When we can lay down the worry and the self-doubt, whether we are good enough, we'll gain some momentum back. When we can lay down the worry whether we have disappointed someone beyond repair, we can gain some energy back. When we can lay down the worry how the market is going to affect our business, but rather practice diligence in taking care of our customers and our employees today, we can gain some time back. We can rest in knowing that in him we can do all things. In this moment, however, in your present moment, and know that tomorrow will have enough worries of its own. So I have learned that leadership starts with leading yourself well. Because if we cannot do that well, how will we be trusted with more, right? I have learned that the beginning of leading yourself well is the pursuit of wisdom. Because here's the difference. When someone insults us, we will feel hurt. We may dwell on it. And worse, we may retaliate. But wisdom gives us the courage to overlook an offense and move on. When someone corrects us, our natural instinct may be to get defensive. But wisdom gives us ears to instruction and heeds correction. When we are motivated to edge out our competition, we may be haste to deploy plan of haste. But wisdom helps us establish a plan of diligence and give thoughts to our steps. When we disagree with a leader, we may make excuses for why we're not following their plan. But wisdom teaches us to respect command. When someone makes a mistake, we may be quick to judge, but wisdom yields patience, gave understanding, and help us extend grace beyond our ability. So the second line of the definition of the word passion is this. You can Google it. Not now. You can trust me now and verify it. Second line of the definition is this. The suffering and the death of Jesus. We'll find ourselves judging other people or overlook a wise advice because of our pride, or let our ambition get the best of us from time to time, or get impatient and disappoint our children. It happened 2 days ago, that by 8 o'clock in the morning, my little guy already threw his hands up in the air with tears in his eyes. This is the most horrible day. That hurts. That hurts. Now, all these moments can hinder your mental capacity and can hinder your relationship with other people. And they hold us back achieving our fullest potential. But as Dr. Ben Carson said it, whatever you fill your mind with, it will impact upon you, whether you like it or not, consciously and subconsciously. But here's the fortunate part. Here is the great news, that the glory and the grace is sufficient every day, every moment, and every single second, if we choose to turn to it, to receive it, so that it may renew our mind. Every day. And your biggest strength have much to teach you about yourself. So look for that lesson, because the moment you turn towards it to be tested, you will refine, you will grow, you will be the leader that others deserve and need you to be. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Everybody stand up for a second. Stretch. Get a little energy. Okay, seconds up. Well, in a discussion on personal leadership, it seems appropriate that I start by saying, well, who is Paul Hindley? Get a little personal. Because some of the comments that I'm going to make, you may ask yourself, where does he come from with that kind of thinking, with that kind of attitude, or that kind of an idea? Well, here's the facts. I'm from Detroit, Detroit born. I'm a Catholic school kid. I was taught by nuns in the 50s. And so a lot of the disciplines and ideas and principles that I have come from that era. And they come from an era where everything was visionary. We hadn't even gone to the moon yet. We hadn't elected a Catholic president yet. We hadn't done a lot of things, and everything was hopeful. Everything was in the future. It was a very, very bright time. From that, taught by nuns, was in Cub Scouts, achieved as a 4-H person, was a paper boy and a real business person, went to Michigan Tech as an engineer, had a sales career, an entrepreneur, owned a trophy shop out in Billings, Montana with some partners, sold trophies all over the United States. In fact, the first plaque award that was given by Jack Nicklaus in his Muirfield country club that he started was sold by Billings Trophy Manufacturing, which is a company that I was a part owner of. This is just really an ordinary journey. I'm just an ordinary person on my journey to heaven, and as so well articulated by our previous speakers, that's really what it's all about. Most importantly, I really learned it by following what I considered some of the masters. I had the opportunity to work with Paul J. Meyer, who's a great motivational speaker and has written some of the most wonderful courses in leadership development and productivity improvement. I attended Zig Ziglar's sessions at the Dallas First Baptist Church when he used to come every Sunday morning and before services do his Bible study, as he called it. Norman Vincent Peale at the Marble Collegiate Church, another one that read all his books and in fact went to Cincinnati, Ohio to find his birthplace at one time because I was so intrigued, but these are real people. These are real people that lived in real cities, and I wanted to go find out where they're from. I went to the Crystal Cathedral, Robert Schuller's out in Los Angeles, when I happened to go out there and I was doing sales engineering work at the Firestone plant out there. And I said, I'm just going to go find this Crystal Cathedral. Is there really a guy by the name of Robert Schuller? And there really was. These are some of the inspirational leaders that I tried to learn from over the years. And one of the things that I learned was from my sales manager when I was in my early 20s. He was an engineering salesman, and he lived right down the road here in Michigan City, Indiana. And Ted was a great sailor. And Ted taught me an awful lot. The first thing he taught me the day he hired me, he said, young man, you get yourself a time management book, and here's the name of the company, the Day Timer, and you better get that and have it here next week. And when you put something in that book and make a commitment, you better be there. If I tell you to be in Chicago Airport at 9:15 in the morning on a certain day and you're not there, it's over. He taught me personal discipline, time management, and making certain that I was responsible for every one of my actions. That was the beginning of my personal leadership. There was a book written, I put it here, First You Have to Row a Little Boat, Reflections on Life and Living, by Richard Bode. If you haven't had occasion to see that book, I would highly recommend it because it's a metaphor, it's a study of his as a young man when he wanted to get a sailboat and become the greatest sea captain in the world. What somebody told him to do is, young man, why don't you go get a little boat and see if you can manage that little boat. You really can't lead others unless you can lead yourself. Much of what we talk about in leadership is, if you may, almost third party. And people say, well, you do this and you do that, and everybody's going to consider you a great leader. Well, that's, in my life experience, hardly true. When you look at personal leadership, everybody wants to start at the top, what I'll call strategic leadership. And they say, I'm going to have the great strategy. Well, how do you know if that strategy will work until you've had time and experience to deploy the strategy and get the feedback and the actions from it? And it's hard to motivate somebody else. People say, well, how come our organization is not going any further? The boss is not motivating us. Well, they haven't developed the skills of motivational leadership. And why is that? Well, they can't lead themselves. They haven't come to the next level. They don't have personal example on their side. They don't have personal fortitude and discipline on their side. They don't have personal productivity, and they didn't have a boss like I had that told me to get it right starting when I was 21 years old. And I was blessed for that kind of learning. When you look at the disciplines of personal leadership, the first one I want you to consider is each of us have within us 6 of them: knowledge, energy, time, imagination, communication, and decision-making capability. And as I address some of those, you might even jot on the note paper, what knowledge do you possess? What energy, time, imagination, communication, decision, characteristics do you enjoy? Because personal leadership is very personal. My leadership journey is my leadership journey. Yours is yours. So let's take a look at some of the knowledge, because every year at minimum, and maybe more often, if you're feeling the mojo is wavering and you just don't feel as good as you should feel, why don't you sit down and take out a piece of paper and write down all of your accomplishments. Because every person in this room has accomplished a great deal. And in fact, as leaders, you wouldn't be in this room if you weren't thoughtful, foresighted, and disciplined to seek better and higher knowledge. You have accomplished a lot. Write it down so you can celebrate it. Here's some of the knowledge that has gone into this person. I went certainly to kindergarten, and you learn most about socialization in kindergarten. And if you didn't learn it there, you learned it at the family dinner table. Had 3 brothers and a sister and great parents, and in that era, we were home for dinner every night at 6 p.m. and not a minute after. And so we enjoyed great training from that, from our teachers, from our coaches. I went on to grade school, high school. I happened to go to Cass Tech High School, where I got 8 courses in electrical engineering in addition to my college prep courses. What a shock. And then I went to the tough engineering school of Michigan Tech and found that in the first 2 years, I was already ahead of the pack because I had that exposure from my high school. But it was a tough, competitive place, and being ahead of the pack doesn't stay for long, because when you're a junior and you're a senior, then of course you've got to compete. But I had a good start. I was accomplished. Off to college, I came out, and now you go to the real world of engineering, where you meet such salts as Ted, who teaches you about the real life. And this is how it really gets applied. It isn't anything like what you read in the books, and all of the formulas and all of the great knowledge you have. It's about how well you can apply that. Engineering, travel, great travel experiences, learning management by being in it, sales training, speaking, presenting, coaching. Technology is changing, and then pretty soon you figure out you're 30 years old and you're obsolete. You are totally obsolete. As an engineer, in 4 years in college, 4 years after you get out, most of what you learn, you're obsolete. And it's probably even faster today. So I am so obsolete after 4 years and 4 years and 4 years. When I went to engineering college as an electrical engineer, there was not a digital electronics course until my final semester. I took 1 digital electronics course. I then went into the computer field. And of course, all of what you know of today, and in fact the story about Kodak is a very true story, because I happen to have been part of that, trying to convince the Kodak management that they were going to lose their entire company because digital electronics were taken over, and they did walk away from it. I bought one of the very first Kodak digital cameras. It cost me $18,000. It was $8,000 for the printer. I took that camera and I went over to the local mall when we shot pictures for Christmas and for the Easter Bunny. And Kodak was amazed at what you could do, and we made money doing it. Well, couldn't they see the future? They never saw the future, unfortunately, and obsolete. Technology changes, negotiation skills changes. You learn about medicine, you learn about your financial situations. There's so much you learn, and that's why I want you to take an opportunity to write down your accomplishments. Every person in this room, if they will take 30 minutes to an hour, will come up with a list of at least 25 things that you've accomplished. That's the beginning of your personal leadership. The second one is your energy. Every one of us have knowledge, every one of us have energy. A friend of mine actually markets this product, Superfood Infusion. He's a coach, and I met him 25, 30 years ago at a conference, and I was impressed by his work. John Allen Mollenauer is his name. And John and I got talking, and I was amazed by all the things he did. I said, well, I'm not much of a workout guy, John. I don't want to lift weights. I don't do all of those things. He says, it's more than that, Paul. It's not just exercise. It's sleep. It's your nutrition. It's, do you have an athletic part of your life that you pursue? I don't care whether it's golf or tennis or skiing or whatever, something in sport and in prayer. You've got to carefully harness your energy in all of these dimensions. Sleep was the number one. As a busy entrepreneur and business owner, of course, I can get away with 6 hours of sleep a night. And he quickly proved that wrong. Within about 30 days, I was sleeping 8 hours a night, every night, and I had been doing that for over 25 or 30 years. Right? Now, what does that do for me? It gives me so much energy that I wasn't getting at 6.5 and 7 hours. And I absolutely require that of myself, part of the personal discipline. I will get 8 hours of sleep every single night. It's just a decision that you make in your own personal leadership. Every person is different, but if you want to use your second asset, energy, you manage it with those characteristics. Then time. I already referenced the time, but I learned a little bit of that also from Norman Vincent Peale and his famous quote, live in day-tight compartments. As a young, ambitious sales engineer, I wanted to be the top salesman. I wanted to travel everywhere. I wanted. And I overextended myself. And I found out I couldn't have everything all at the same time. Stress could take over. Disappointment can take over. And then the negative spiral takes over. So what did you simply do? Like Norman Vincent Peale says, you live in 24 hours a day. That's all you give yourself. And you make that 24 hours the absolute best 24 hours that you've ever experienced in your life. In my case, I have 16 left because I'm sleeping 8. And I plan out the 16 to make them the best 16 hours that I can expend in my entire life. And then tomorrow, if I'm fortunate enough, I'll get to do it again. Communication. Boy, communication is an often talked about subject, but very weakly addressed. Weak in the W-E-A-K version. Now what I mean is people say they want to communicate, but they don't realize that they already are communicating. Here's how you communicate. You communicate, first of all, in your personal image. Jeffrey said it at the beginning of this conference. We know this is a brilliant group. Look how well they're dressed. Right? That's an interpretation of personal image. In years past, the phrase used to be, dress for the job you want, not the job you have. If you want to make a personal presence, I watched the automotive industry. When I went into that industry, every day looked like this for everybody. And then as the years waned and their profits waned, I began to ask which was the cause and which was the effect. Because you would go with meetings and they all looked like bums. And they were on the way to being bums. And it's simply personal image has an awful lot to do with what you're communicating. Your engagement. How well you engage people. One of the disciplines that I applied to myself years ago was to greet people more aggressively. Not in an aggression fashion, in a more assertive way. Be more friendly. So I set a goal, a personal goal, is I will personally smile and say hello to at least 3 people today. So when you go to a building, you go open the door for somebody, some way to get in front of another human being, smile and say hello to them. The truth is, it's like giving away anything. You get more back than you give. You get a bigger smile, you learn more about people, and you get energy from them that is far better than the energy, or far stronger than the energy that you give up. Your walk, your talk, and your ear. How well you're listening. Always a difficult discipline. Applying to myself every day. Shut up and listen. Try to listen to the other person. To feel what they're saying. To hear what they're saying. To experience what they're saying. When you do that, you will properly act. You already have the right decision-making characteristics. It's a matter of you're not carefully listening and then you're reacting to something that wasn't even said or that didn't even happen. How well you listen, and then the written word. I commented earlier in one of the conversations, I used to edit the yearbook in college and the newspaper in college. And I can see paragraphs and semicolons and periods to the point that it's irritating for most people. And the comment was made is, yeah, and today that doesn't even apply. That's right, and that's what people have adopted. They've adopted, oh, we can text it, we can misspell it, we can get away with it, nobody cares. Well, let me tell you, I care, and there's a lot of other people that care. So don't fool yourself. When in fact, a piece of written documentation is sent out and it's poorly formatted, poorly written, poorly punctuated, you have just put a negative in your column. And it's a silly thing to do because your communication is up to you. And you have full control of your communication. So take advantage of that as a personal leader. And if you want somebody else to follow your example, do you want them to text poorly, spell improperly, use poor grammar? If that's what you want following you, then in fact, that's what you're going to get. Imagination. I put this picture of Detroit up here. And for those of I was born and raised in Detroit. I came over here to Grand Rapids probably when I was 21. One of my best friends in college lived here. And I went to the old Amway Hotel and all of that in the old days of Grand Rapids. And it was kind of getting old and all of that other things. You've done a marvelous job in the city of Grand Rapids, bringing this whole community back together, rebuilding it the whole bit. Detroit has not been so blessed over the last 25, 30 years. It's on its march now, and it's starting back again because there are some imaginative people leading the company. Leading the city. In addition to all the industrialists and financiers and sorts that are in there, I have to tell this one story. The young man, Michael Duggan, who's now the mayor of Detroit, I used to cut his grandmother's lawn. You see, his grandparents lived 2 doors from us on the east side of Detroit. His aunt is my sister's godmother. When Mr. Duggan, Grandpa Duggan, passed away, Mrs. Duggan moved down the street. And we boys in the neighborhood in that era, that's what we did, took care of all the senior people. And we cut their lawns, and we painted their houses, and we did all of those things. So as I watched young Mike Duggan get in to be mayorship, I thought to myself, I sure hope the principles of his grandparents and his family stuck with him in the 3rd generation, and he would bring that back. And it's looking like that's exactly what's happening. That kind of principle, do the right thing, leadership, and building happens again. Decision making is the final asset that you really have. Decision making today needs to be moved out of this analysis, paralysis, and debate and argument into clarity and speed. Look at the facts, take in the feedback, and make a decision. I was remarking to Jeffrey, the comment that I use sometimes with people is, right now we need digital leadership. They say, what's digital leadership? Yes or no? 1 or 0. The reason computers work so well is they don't sit around and debate. It's either a 1 or a 0, and then you move on to the next transaction. 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, 0. I call that digital leadership. Which way do we go? Just make a decision. Another one, my favorite, is have goals. This is another little book you might pick up, The Power of 3, written by another friend of mine. She's over in Chicago, Lisa Dietland. She was a fundraiser for Michigan Tech, and that's how I came to know her. She went on to write a book called Transformational, not leadership, yeah, it could be Transformational Leadership for the Nonprofits. She is a TV personality and a speaker, national speaker, on everything nonprofits and fundraising, and she's a brilliant person. She went to Central Michigan University. She's a native of this state. She loves Michigan. She's over in Chicago, and she's somebody that knows goals. She wrote this little book that says all you need to do is 3 things a day. And it's true. When I taught productivity improvement classes, I would measure and manage every activity that was going on with every student. And at the peak of their performance, after 8 weeks of listening to this work, they would get 3.1 things done per day. They would start from, on average in a class, about 0.5 things getting done per day, and at the peak of their performance, they would hit 3.1. So Lisa had it right. There's power in 3. And if you just do 3 things a day times 365 days, you can rest assured 2017, you will have been able to accomplish 1,000 things. And somebody says, how was your 2017? He said, I accomplished 1,000 things. They'll look at you with absolute amazement. That's personal leadership. Forget about what other people are doing. What's your personal leadership? You can get everything in life if you want, if you just help other people get what they want. You have all probably heard that quote of Zig Ziglar's. And if you're looking for something to do tomorrow morning, figure out what you can do for somebody else. And once you figure out what you can do for somebody else, you'll come up with 3 things for yourself that quick. Start your day every day with thinking of the other person, and then put the 3 things for yourself. It really comes down to this. Leadership requires followership. See, you are not a leader, regardless of your title, if in fact nobody follows. And when you're not accomplishing the goals you want, and you're not accomplishing the work you want in the business, and your employees aren't doing what you want them to do, it's simply because they're not following you. That is a very hard pill to swallow. And I have swallowed it many times over the years. But might as well take the medicine, take the pill, and do something different about it. Leadership requires followership. Everyone wants to follow a winner, and your results are the only certification that you need for leadership. You don't need a degree from a university on leadership. You don't need a performance class. You don't need all those graduations. You need the certification of results. And I'll give you the great current example. Tom Brady, New England Patriots, Super Bowl. They interviewed Tom Brady at the end of it and kept saying, but didn't you realize there was only a minute left and you were 17 points down? Didn't you realize there was only 10 seconds left and you were going to lose? And didn't you realize? And he stared at them in the camera and he says, that's why we play till the end of the game. There was no doubt in Tom Brady's mind that he was going to deliver results. That's what he got paid to do. And he was not going to quit until the end of the game on delivering results. That's leadership people want to follow. So what are your next steps? Please take those 6 areas, do your list of accomplishments, which is 25, and then go put a half a dozen things under each of those categories of your knowledge that you possess, the energy, the time, imagination, communication, the decision-making capabilities you already own. Take them and use them to achieve your goal. Be an example. Teach others then that very simple process, and you will multiply your results. Comes down to this is your life. Years ago, there used to be a TV program in the 50s or 60s called This Is Your Life, and people would be brought in at the end of their life, and it'd all get played back to them. I challenge you today, when they play back your movie on This Is Your Life, will it be filled with the goals and the plans and the results that you want it to be? You must accept responsibility for your own personal leadership. When you do that, others will simply follow. See, we really don't need to master any art in leadership. What we need to master is our own personal leadership. I put here in the close, in memory to my friend Ted Amber, in the Michigan City Yacht Club, as we used to sail up Lake Michigan up to Mackinac Island. Ted said, watch for the lighthouses. Watch for the lighthouses. I didn't know why. And the reason why is he wanted to keep us offshore far enough because there's some places on that shoreline that if you're too close, you're going to hit ground before you pass it. It looks like you're 30 miles off of Petoskey or something like that, but you're going to hit ground, low ground. Lighthouses are the beacons to take us where we want to go. You want to be a lighthouse for other sailors. And you really want to be a lighthouse to lead yourself first. If you lead yourself first, you will be the light that other people need to help them sail their own little boat. Thank you.
Okay. So with the Tom Brady reference, I feel compelled to say go green. Thank you. Thank you. So something Paul said made me laugh, but I was the only one that laughed, so I need to talk about it again to see if it was just me, and I need to check on my sense of humor. Paul said he took 8 electrical engineering classes in high school, and then he said, what a shock. Thank you. Somebody else got it. I was like, am I the only one that heard that? That was really funny, so thanks for that. So what am I up here for? Oh yeah, call to action. So when I go to things like this, and I think this has been just a wonderful event, but I don't know if you're like me. Sometimes when I go to conferences and seminars and things like that, I have one of a few different reactions. Sometimes I have the reaction of, yes, I'm energized, I'm charged, I'm going to go change my whole organization or change the world. Sometimes I have the reaction that says, so much stuff, I don't even know where to start. What do? I've just been fed with a fire hose and I have no idea what I should go and do because it was all great stuff, which it was. And sometimes I could have the reaction of, man, I've heard all that before. I knew that. I knew that. To which I would agree with Michelle and say, if you're in that comfort zone, then challenge yourself and make yourself uncomfortable, because we all need to grow. So as I've been thinking about how to sort of wrap this portion of today up, I'm reminded of a guy in the Bible named David. And David had a really interesting life. And as a boy, you probably have heard this story, as a boy, he ends up fighting a giant from the Philistine army that's going against the Israelites. So nobody else in the army dares to fight him. But David as a boy comes and says, I'll do it. Because you know what? I was out with the sheep and I can beat up lions and I can kill lions. I can do it. Besides, he's talking bad about my God, so I'm going to take him out. So David, this boy, becomes this hero. And he becomes a hero and everybody loves him. And he goes on to win many, many wars. And he ends up becoming a king. And now he's the ruler of everything. So David is a hero, and David is a king. But David is also an adulterer, and David is a murderer. Because this power that David acquires, power given to him in many ways by God, leads to a pride. And leads to sort of that feeling of, I've got this. So one day all his men are out at war. He looks out his, he didn't have a laptop, so he looked out his window. And he looks down the window and he sees what he was looking for, that if he had a laptop he would have found it. And he sees this naked lady on a rooftop. And he says, I want that. So he has her brought to his quarters, and they have sex. I can say that because nobody's under 18 in the room, and he feels guilty. Now, she was married, so he committed adultery. He feels guilty. What if she's pregnant? Well, her husband is out leading battle and had been on the battlefield for a long, long time. So understanding biology, even in that time in the world, it still took 9 months to make a baby. So obviously, if she's pregnant, this is not going to go well. So he has her husband brought back, thinking, well, if her husband comes back, then he'll have some time with his wife, and then they won't know whose baby it is. Well, the husband is too loyal to the leader, and the husband won't visit his wife. He will only stay in the palace with the king. Now what do? I'll kill him. So he has her husband killed. This hero, this king, becomes an adulterer and a murderer. But yet, in the scriptures, he's listed in Hebrews as one of the heroes of the faith. He's spoken of as being after God's own heart. And if you go into the lineage of Jesus in the book of Matthew, there's David listed. Now, I'd get it if it was the hero and the king, but there's David the adulterer and the murderer also, who's listed in the lineage of David. By the way, there's also Rahab the prostitute. Now that preaches down at the mission when you can say, that might be who you were, but you know what God can do with you? Because there's Rahab, who was our ancestor of Jesus. There's a calling. There's a calling. So I wonder if David wrestled with some of those same things. I got this. I'm the king. And pride comes before the fall. I wonder if David wrestled with, I am going to go change the world. I've got this. And I think he did, because when we read some of his writings in the Psalms, there are certainly emotions there where he's riding the wave. He is God's chosen one, and he is riding the wave, and he's going to change the world. And then I think there's times where we see in David's writings that he's completely overwhelmed and he doesn't know what to do next. I don't know how to take the next step forward. And often at those times is actually when he reaches out and he cries out to God and he says, why would you do this to me? Which, growing up in West Michigan, we don't always think it's okay to look at God and say, what are you doing? But apparently in the Bible, it's okay. So we can shed sort of our West Michigan-ness and we can actually look up to God and say, what are you doing? Where are you? Do you even exist? Right? Do you even exist? So when I think about David and I think about his life and I think about leadership, great leader, flawed leader. And then I look at myself and say, I hope I'm a good leader. I know I'm a flawed leader. What do I do next? What is the next step? How do I make sure that I steer away from some of those pitfalls that we all fall into and that David did? How do I not get overwhelmed? And how do I take this calling that God has given me? And how do I take that next step forward? And for me in my life, when I wrestle with that question, I tend to always go back. I was so grateful that you guys were referencing all the books, and I was so grateful that somebody said, thank you for putting Scripture first, because it was there on purpose. Because I do go back to Jesus as the ultimate leader first. If I can be more like Jesus, I know I've grown as a better leader. So when I think about Jesus' leadership, I wonder about his mission, vision, and calling. And you know, part of the challenge with Jesus when he was on earth is everybody wanted to tell him what his mission was. A lot of the religious people at the time, a lot of the Jewish people, they wanted him to come and throw Rome out. Establish our country, our kingdom, no more oppression, and that's what you're here to do. But Jesus said in Luke 14 that this is what he was here to do. He appointed me to preach the gospel to the poor. He sent me to proclaim release to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set free those who are oppressed, and to proclaim the favorable year of the Lord. Another place in Scripture it says that he came to give his life as a ransom for many. Well, that's not the hero leader, is it? Right? I mean, the hero leader would ride in and kick out the Roman army and throw them over and establish a new kingdom and say, here we are. That's not what Jesus did. So, you know, a few years ago, I think, if you're like me, I heard the term servant leadership way too much. And I still love servant leadership, but the term just makes me think, oh, do I have to hear that term again? But Jesus was the ultimate servant leader. And I think that's the answer to those questions that we might be asking. What do I do now? Or what do I do if I feel like I have this? Or what's that one thing because I feel overwhelmed? I think Jesus tells us what that one thing to do. And more importantly, he shows us what that one thing to do is. So we talked up here about you can't lead if no one's following you. And I've had times in my career where I looked back and no one was following me. And I thought, those people are really dumb because where we're going is right and good and it's awesome. And can't they see this? You know, if the whole world would think like me, we'd be all right. But I turn around and nobody's following me and I blame them, but I should be looking at myself, right? We were talking after the first session during the break, and we were sharing that one of the most challenging scriptures to me is about Jesus washing the feet of his disciples. The King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, on his knees, washing the feet, even of the one who was to betray him. If Jesus is God and he knew everything, he knew that Judas was going to betray him, and yet he's on his knees before him washing his feet. He betrayed the one who he knew would deny him 3 times. It's really hard to serve people when you're standing above them. You can't wash someone's feet standing above them. You can only wash somebody's feet when you're on your knees. And that's what Jesus tells us about leadership. He says, if you want to be a great leader, follow me. And here's what I do. I'm getting on my knees and I'm washing people's feet, even those that I know are going to betray me. So in the book of Philippians, Paul describes in Philippians chapter 2, he says, hey, if you want to know the secret to life, here's what we need to do. You need to be like Jesus. And he describes being like Jesus as thinking about others and their needs before your own. Whoa, 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 whoa. I'm the leader. Let's review the organizational chart. Here I am. I'm looking for you. But Jesus says, I got a little dizzy. That's fine. But Jesus says, and Paul describes Jesus as saying, think of all other people and their needs before me. And oftentimes we nod at that scripture, not understanding what it means because there's no asterisk in that scripture. Serve any other Republicans and concerned about their needs, but not the Democrats. Consider the race that you are not as better than you and think of their needs before you do. To really follow Jesus is extremely scandalous. To be a leader like Jesus is to be scandalous. It's to serve and follow and consider the needs of those that you lead and the needs of those who are different than you. That's the whole story of the Good Samaritan. The Good Samaritan is not a flannel graph. Okay, millennials will talk about flannel graph later. It's a flannel, it's not a flannel graph. I can't talk now. Be kind to everybody like we do in Sunday school, right, in the flannel graph. It's one of the most profound scriptures in the world that should rock our lives, because what Jesus is saying is if you want to understand what my kingdom is like, then you're supposed to be the Good Samaritan to the person that you hate the most. Wow. So we were just in Washington. I grew up learning how to pray about our elected leaders. We're not called to pray about them. We're called to pray for them. Far different, far different. So Paul goes on to say, okay, the attitude of Jesus and being like Jesus as a leader is to say, put everyone and their needs and their thoughts and their people, their persons ahead of yourself. And then he says, in case you still don't get it, here's what you need to do. You need to be like Jesus, who humbled himself and became obedient. He didn't take his position and lord it over people, but he humbled himself and became obedient to those he was trying to serve, and obedient even to death. So I wonder if, boy, this is heavy, we should pass the offering plate after this. I wonder if the takeaway for some of us today, it certainly is for me, I wonder if the takeaway, what is my next step? And I know that Jeffrey's going to come up and lead us through that, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but I'm a pastor and I have to, so I'm going to. I wonder if that next step is to say, who can I serve today? And maybe it's the employee that you're getting ready to fire on Monday. Doesn't mean they don't need to be fired on Monday. But what is the product that we're actually selling? What is the reason that we're actually here to do something? And remember that Jesus couldn't wash feet standing above somebody. He could only wash feet kneeling in front of them. So I think of one of my favorite business examples, and thank you for affirming me on the Kodak story. Appreciate that. But I love Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A is either making the stupidest business decision or the smartest business decision by not being open on Sundays. Right? Because if you research, as far as I know, the fast food industry, Sunday is one of, if not the busiest days for fast food, the fast food industry. Do you know how many billions of dollars of sales Chick-fil-A is giving up every year by not being open on Sunday? Probably millions in net profit that they're giving up. So some people immediately go, well, they're Christians, so it's a Christian stand. According to their website, it's not. According to their website, it's a business decision that certainly flows from their Christian principles. I haven't been on their website in about a year, but for years, it's probably still there. When they ask the question on the frequently asked questions, why are you not open on Sunday? The answer is because we value our employees as the number one thing that we are responsible for in our company. And we believe that our employees should have a day where they don't have to work, they can be with their family, and if they choose, they can go to worship somewhere. Well, if I were to ask you, what is Chick-fil-A's business? What's the product? We would all say chicken. I think Chick-fil-A understands that's not their number one product. That's the outflowing of their product. That's the outflowing of what their real product is. Their real product is a place to serve people, to allow people to have jobs and lives, the ability to support their family. And in doing that, they produce a product that the consumer wants. But they haven't mixed up the fact that chicken isn't really what their number one goal is. So if we're a secular company, if we're a ministry, regardless of what we are, what is it that we're really doing every day? And can we go back even today, and can we find one person in our organization or one customer to serve? Because what I'm learning, I've not learned it yet, what I'm learning is the more I serve the guests that are in our mission, me personally, not Mel Trotter, the more I personally serve the staff and the volunteers that come into our organization, every time I turn around to see who's following, the crowd grows. But every time I stand up, I turn around and the crowd has thinned out. So I wonder if the key to leadership, the key to mission, vision, and calling is what the Bible for thousands of years has been trying to tell us. The key is to be like Jesus. The key is to serve and to lead like Him. And when we do that, then God takes that and He waters it and He blesses it, and the results go way beyond what we could ever ask for, dream, or imagine. So thank you very much. I'm going to give it over to Jeffrey.
Thank you for watching this presentation. Perhaps you've never made a Christian commitment. We want to give you that opportunity today. Just a few easy steps. First of all, recognize your need. The Bible tells us that in Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All of us are sinners and must recognize our need for a Savior. By confessing our sins and turning from them, we will find forgiveness. The Bible promises in 1 John 1:9, if we confess our sins, He is faithful and righteous to forgive us our sins and to cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Believe in Jesus. God wrought a miracle when He sent His only Son to die that we might have life. Put your faith in Him and believe in His power to save you. The Bible says in John 3:16, for God so loved the world that He gave His only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in Him shall not perish, but have eternal life. God has given us a great gift in His Son, but we must receive this gift. Thank Him for loving and forgiving you, and ask Him to live in your heart. His promise to us is clear. In John 1:12, the Bible says, but as many as received Him, To them he gave the right to become children of God. So Jesus is the atonement, the sacrificial lamb, the remission of sins, just as if we'd never sinned, and the forgiveness. Through Jesus, we have daily forgiveness. And having received his salvation, confess your faith. The Bible assures us in Romans 10:9, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. You know, we're all going to die and spend eternity somewhere, either in heaven or in hell. We want to give you the opportunity to pray with us today. Let's bow our head. Lord, I recognize my need for you as my Savior. I confess my sins to you now, and I turn from them, and I ask for your forgiveness, Lord. I believe in you, Lord Jesus, that you died for me, that I might have eternal life with you in heaven. Lord Jesus, I receive you now in my heart, and I thank you for forgiving me. I thank you that you love me. I thank you that you receive me into your kingdom. I believe in my heart that you are my Lord and that God raised you from the dead, that I might be saved and spend eternity with you. I thank you, Lord, that I am now part of God's family, and I commit my life to you from this day forward. Amen. And if you've prayed that prayer with us, we encourage you to share that with someone today. Thank you.